and welcome to the Tuesday, June 6th, 2023 meeting of the Long Meadow School Committee. School committees and other public bodies may continue to hold remote meetings through March 31st, 2025, under legislation enacted on March 29th, 2023. The statute, Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, extends quorum reductions for remote meetings. All votes while there is remote participation must be made by roll call vote. Tonight's meeting is being recorded and aired live by LCTV. We will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have no correspondence tonight. Worked that out nicely. Last one. And we will move right on to the approval of minutes. Do I have a recommended motion?
I move that the school committee approve the minutes to the May 23rd, 2023 school committee meeting as presented.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll move to a vote. Do we have anybody at home? Okay. Jana?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Jamie?
Yes.
And yes for me as well. All right, visitor comments. We will open to visitor comments. Anyone who is here who would like to comment, and or if you are at home and would like to comment, turn your camera on, put your hand up. Any of the above? All right, seeing no comments, we will move right on to our school committee announcements and recognitions, and I'm going to kick us off tonight with a final send-off and thank you to two of our long-serving members and two people who have both inspired me personally over the last few years a lot. It's a rough one. So both of you stepped up to this role in a moment of real transition for the town, and you just hit the ground running with so much energy and dedication and hard work and all of this for the students of Long Meadow. And we have been inspired by and just the better for all of your hard work over the last few years. And really, it's been an honor to work alongside two amazing educators and just all around crazy smart people. We've got plaques, and we're going to start with each of you. And Gianna's is on top, so that works out nicely. Gianna, I've known for a long time. And she is one of those people who just randomly sends you a text or drops off a little handwritten note to tell you that she thinks that you're, you know, a star and awesome. And I've seen you lift so many people's spirits over the years with your energy and kindness and thoughtfulness. And I hope that you know that you are just such a rock star to all of us. You have kept a really strong focus in your 4 years here on the social and emotional needs of the kids of this town. And have been an amazing resource and leader for our district's work in curriculum and equity, and just an awesome and dedicated supporter and advocate for the Special Education Alliance of Long Meadow. So I'll pass this to you first. And we have one for Kevin, too. Kevin, you've given over the last 4 years a lot of your time and energy to the town, both in the school department and in other committees around the town as well. And you've just been an awesome resource for all of us. You're always really good at listening carefully to all of the angles of a particular issue and then coming out with such a well thought out and reasoned response. And also, we are all really appreciative of your calm and steady leadership during the incredibly difficult year that was last year, and just so appreciative of how much time and energy you put into that, and you really left some big shoes to fill there. So thank you so much for all the work that you've done. So I hope you both know how much your services have meant to the town as a whole, and how much we hope all good things for you moving forward onto your next adventures, and hopefully have some fun things planned. And I know wherever you are headed next, you will be an amazing resource for that group as well. So thank you again for all of your work the last few years.
Thank you.
One more round of applause. All right. other announcements and recognitions, and also I suspect other people have some things to add in, so I will open the floor to other announcements or recognitions.
Yeah,
Go for it,
just
Jamie.
really no words can really put it into, any sort of context with what both of you have done. I came onto this board with both of you in a very interesting time. I didn't realize a pandemic was coming, or I would have not have chosen this, but the pay was good. We get paid so much on this, it's what pays my bills, as I told you earlier. But you two are amazing. I had more conversations with you, Gianna, during many, times through the pandemic, always focusing on the students and the staff and everybody that's involved in Long Meadow Schools. You're a loss. I mean, it's a big shoes to fill, and you and your husband and your kids are all amazing people that give more to this school than I don't know many families that give that much time to these schools. So, it's a shame that you're not coming back, but I'm sure we'll see you around and truly appreciate everything that you've done. So it's been a blast. And Kevin, I echo what Nicole said. During that pandemic and after, you were a voice of reason. It wasn't fun. It was hard. It was like every week. The staff had a lot of pain to go through, but it was a lot for anybody who signed up for. You obviously are someone at Smith that they truly cherish having around. So is this board. So it's a shame that you're not going to stay with us, even though all your kids are out of the school system. But both you two, talk about the two right people at the right time during what we dealt with in the beginning into what we dealt with now during the pandemic, and now where we are now, where it's so calm and feels like almost easy. So truly going to be missed as well. It's honestly great getting to know you as well, during that, and obviously knowing you for a long time. So thank both of you. Truly, it's been an honor.
Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you, Jen.
I just want to say thank you to both of you too. Being new to school committee, you all have been so welcoming. I think it was, when I was thinking about running for school committee, one of the selling points was that it's such an inviting group of people, very welcoming, very easy to make decisions with, even when we don't all see eye to eye on things. And I think the two of you just kind of embody that spirit. I think, Kevin, you've been so great about just sort of intro to school committee, really at the point where I don't even know what question I should be asking myself about what's happening. You're sort of up there to say, Julie, this is, and that has been so helpful. And then Gianna, of course, you're the spirit of the school committee. I think you, have just provided so much to all of us, both on and off the committee. So it'll be really sad to see both of you go. Big shoes to fill, but you're welcome at any time to come speak to us. Whatever issue you'd like. So hopefully we'll keep seeing you at the meetings. But thank you.
Thank you, Julie.
Thank you.
And I obviously would echo everything that everyone has said. You've both been incredible assets to the community, and from the conversations that we've had together here in this room or offline or in the community, trying to work for a better community and a brighter future. You're just, to borrow Nicole's phrase, you're both rock stars that I don't think most folks can ever appreciate or fathom outside of your family, how much you've sacrificed to make Long Meadow a great place to be and to make the schools a wonderful place. So thank you both.
Thank you, Zach.
If I could, I know my piece of the agenda doesn't come up till later, but this is definitely a tough goodbye. Just really grateful for Gianna and Kevin and the steady hand that they provided, and they've been sources of support, and they've stretched us and pushed us in so many great ways, and to come into the community and to take on the position at a difficult time and to work so thoughtfully through the pandemic. And, to do this job right, it requires an enormous amount of time. It requires an enormous amount of homework. It requires an enormous amount of relationship building, and Gianna and Kevin did that consistently, and I always appreciated that. And I think I'm speaking for the administrative team to express my thanks and appreciation for Gianna and Kevin. And and the skills that you brought, and, you know, Kevin, I'm not sure I've ever met anybody who asks better questions than you. I'm not sure I've ever met anybody who can get to the heart of matters so quickly and so succinctly, and I've learned that from you, that to get to the point. Gianna, Julie said it well, the spirit of the committee, you know, someone who has kept our eyes focused on the social emotional needs of children, and you're always so good at bringing conversations back to kids, and always grateful for that. So thank you, thank you, thank you on behalf of the entire administrative team. You guys have been rock stars, and always grateful. So thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent.
I have one to read from Mary. Mary was not able to be here tonight because she has an LPVEC prior commitment, but she sent this to me and asked me to read it for you guys. Gianna, you consistently celebrate the achievements of staff and students by publicly acknowledging good work, and tonight we have the opportunity to acknowledge you. In all decisions, you consider the social emotional needs of staff and students. You're an advocate for students with disabilities, and you have been a champion of the Special Education Alliance of Long Meadow. You are engaged in the community at large, and you're present at so many school and community events. You even wear Long Meadow swag with frequency. Case in point. Your love for Long Meadow Public Schools is evident in all that you do. Kevin, your leadership as the school committee chair during the 2021-22 school year was a thing of beauty. Thank you for leading the district at a critical time during the pandemic and arguably through one of the most challenging years in the history of American public education. I admire your approach to all decisions that come before the committee, your reasonable and fair outlook, your openness to differing opinions, and your ability to ask just the right questions. Gianna and Kevin, my sincerest thanks for your many years of service to this community. I have learned so much from both of you, and it has been a pleasure serving with you. I cannot help but wonder what you will do with all of your free time. So, thank you again. It has been an absolute privilege to work with both of you for the last 4 years, well, the last 3 years with me. We have been lucky to have you.
Thank you, Nicole.
Any further announcements or recognitions?
Is it okay for me to?
Absolutely.
Like,
Yes.
I seriously can't even look up because Mrs. Hutton got me already. The hardest decision to make, deciding not to run again for re-election for the school committee. Sorry. Super hard. And I know this meeting, I know we have a lot to go through for this meeting, but it was the right decision for my family. It was the right decision for the town and the schools, just because my daughter will be graduating next year, and then my son will be stationed in the Coast Guard, go Coast Guard, the year after that. And so my life focus will be changing, and there's so much for Long Meadow Public Schools to look forward to with the new middle school and the new personnel that's coming on, just all the great things that I see ahead for Long Meadow Public Schools and the town. And it was super hard. My heart is in Long Meadow. My kids were raised in the Long Meadow Public Schools. And as I was talking to Mrs. Hutton outside, she's a principal of Center School, I was telling her that it was really hard and that I was going to be really sad. And then she proceeded to say, we were talking about her teacher named Cecilia, and then she mentioned my daughter, Cecilia. She said, oh, and Cecilia wrote this most beautiful thank you letter to a former Center School teacher. And I said, wait, what? And she said, yeah, I have it here, I'll read it to you. And so I let her read it, which was the biggest mistake ever. Because basically it proves everything that I'm crying about, which is my kids were raised in the Long Meadow Public Schools, and every step along the way has been a blessing to us. And so my heart is in Long Meadow, my heart is in Springfield, where I'm a school counselor, and my heart is also at the Coast Guard Academy. So I won't be sitting here, but you're still going to get my Friday phone call, Superintendent, because
Including the star emoji?
with the star emoji, smile face, whatever happiness is at that moment. But I'm still collaborating with some Long Meadow Public School educators on different projects that will benefit students here, students in Springfield, and in some cases students in Massachusetts. So my heart will still be with Longmeadow, just not at this table, but I do just like Sue and Tom and, Tom answering my crazy questions and phone calls no matter what, and Diane just training me and keeping me on track with just everything. You're the lifeline for this committee, and Jamie, my table buddy, and Julie, inspiration, and superintendent also answering all of my crazy texts and questions, and just being available every single time there was a question. And most people don't know this, but you've inspired me since you were in Wilbraham, because you allowed me to do something to celebrate my father, and that's where I was like, Marty's my guy. So thank you for then
Yeah.
bringing that same
Always.
positivity and purpose to
Yeah.
Longmeadow. Nicole, I'll get you later, because, it would take years. Kevin, thank you for being my, scientific inspiration and my just methodical, like, strategic, where my brain is, like, my heart's over here, and you're like, okay, we got science over here. We have to work that out, so thank you. And Zach, thank you for joining. Again, I've already spoken way too long, but I just felt it was really important because Longmeadow is awesome, and I do wear I'll keep wearing my swag. So, and thank you to everybody in the community who's been so wonderful. But go Longmeadow, and thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
So, yeah, thank you to everyone. I guess just some of my reflections, there are two things that I've done in town that I was hesitant to do and were the best decisions that I ever made. One was coaching softball, and that was transformative in my life. And same for being a part of this committee. So for people who are in town and think about, is this something that I might want to do? The only way this works is if people who come at this with the right mentality and open-mindedness and thoughtfulness decide to serve. And I think it's really important for everybody to remember that, because we need committees like this to have people who have the right things at the forefront. And I tried to do that my whole time here. And I definitely remember 4+ years ago sitting on the other side of the table and having a bunch of my friends in town encourage me to step up. And doing that as a way, I think, to show my kids, mainly more than anybody, that you have to step up sometimes. And I'm really glad that I did. And it's funny because I remember the conversations those times that, like, people had asked me what my goals were on the school committee, and my goals were to make Tuesday night school committee not must-see TV, right? And, like, I think we did that for a very brief period of time, and then we were back in prime time, and it was like, what is going on? So I feel like this year we are not must-see TV, and, like, that is success. But I think, I really think it's important to thank all of you, and the past school committee members too. I feel like for the time I've been on the committee, we've had really a very functional committee. We didn't always agree, but we disagreed productively. We made decisions, and then we supported those decisions, and I felt like it was just a very, very functional group. I also really appreciate all of the administrators, the folks around this table, the principals. I know Donna's here, but there are other principals who are on the administrative team. Those meetings and those relationships were really, really important and powerful. And I think my goal always was to think about having great team, administrators and teachers and staff, who were doing great work. And our job was to really stay out of their way and only to be there as guardrails. If something was going a little weird, bring it back, but to trust that all of you are doing great work, which you all are doing. And then we had, in normal times like now, we're lucky enough to just celebrate the great work that you're doing, the teachers are doing, the staff are doing. And then, of course, to celebrate the great work that our students are doing, which has been lovely this year, that we've had time to have kids come in and to see videos and to have kids here and we're doing math projects with them. And like that was, to me, it was really lovely this year that we got back to doing a lot of that. So I will close. But thank you. This really has been a privilege, and it will be sad to go. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, final comments. These are some hard acts. All right, we are going to move on into the rest of our meeting with business with guests. We have a new Director of Student and Family Support to welcome. We'll let Dr. O'Shea
Yeah, so
introduce.
super excited to introduce Nilda Irizarry, who is our new Director of Student and Family Support, our first Director of Student and Family Support. Nilda comes to us highly recommended from Farmington, where she serves as Farmington, Connecticut, where she serves as a middle school principal. And as I talked to her superintendent, assistant superintendent, they told me that she was one of the most equity-focused, inclusion-focused educators that they had ever worked with. And so really happy to introduce Nilda to the school committee and to the community. And Nilda will begin work as our Director of Student and Family Support on July 1st. And as a reminder, this position is really meant to support and elevate the increasingly important non-academic aspects of our work, specifically around tiered approaches to social emotional learning. Nilda will be instrumental in helping us drive some of our DEI initiatives and a whole lot of other things. So, Nilda Irizarry, welcome to Long Meadow. We're very happy to have you here tonight. Yeah.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Yeah.
So I already knew Long Meadow was the place for me, but after hearing some of the comments to open this meeting, it really just touched my heart, and I just want to thank you both for your service. And this warm, welcoming, collaborative environment is what I saw present in every school during the interview process. So I just would like to open by thanking all of the members of the Long Meadow School Committee for their dedication to this community. I'd like to thank Dr. O'Shea, along with members of the central office team, for their commitment to this community and their commitment to this Director of Student and Family Support role. It's not a role that many school districts have, but it's so essential. And then I'd like to thank the Long Meadow Public School Administration and the school-based staff members that were a part of the interview process. The questions were thoughtful, inspiring, and throughout the process, I understood more and more about this community and fell in love with it. The Director of Family and Support position, it is very close to my heart. Student well-being is more important now than ever. And aligning those systems of social emotional learning, those equity-based systems across the district will help us leverage our efforts and support all students. As I noticed through the district's continuous improvement work, Long Meadow Public Schools already values this work. And based on my visits to Long Meadow schools, there is a collective commitment to knowing students deeply, personalizing programs to address individual student needs, and there's a deep emphasis on the whole child, which I only hope to elevate, articulate, and communicate with our community. There's so much that is being done right in Long Meadow. I hope to align those efforts on social emotional learning so that it can be cohesive and effective for all students. Education has been a transformative force in my life. I attended school in Springfield, Massachusetts. I was born and raised there, and I currently still live there. I attended schools in the late 80s, early 90s, and despite a challenging home environment and community environment, I attended school and teachers showed me so much warmth. And in those nurturing classrooms, I knew that I could excel in learning. So I had teachers every day saying, I think you should read this book. You should take this home. Continue to write. You're an amazing writer. And that belief in me allowed me to excel in school and pursue a career in education. It's what Zaretta Hammond in Culturally Responsive Teaching in the Brain calls being a warm demander. It's having that sense of warmth and love for students, and yet still pushing them to high expectations with the right supports in place. In my over 20-year career in education, as a teacher, administrator, and department chair, I've consistently tried to promote systems to close opportunity gaps, to increase access to all learners. And I've worked collaboratively to create these proactive plans that can support students K-12. I, in collaboration with various teams, increased learning about student emotions, about their culture and their identity, so that teachers are more aware of that and bring some of that into their lessons and instruction and assessment practices. As I begin this work, I hope to understand this community deeply. I want to listen to the insights of all community members, families, educators, and students. I want to continue partnerships with community organization to increase mental health supports offered in this district and leverage some external resources so that we can support this community in mental health needs. I want to continue to align district work in the areas of social emotional learning and equity and inclusion work so that it's collaborative, it continues to be transparent, and of course data driven. And as always, I value relationships, collaboration, and feedback throughout all steps of my work. So I just want to thank you all for this exciting new position and your warm welcome to Long Meadow Public Schools.
Welcome once again. Yeah.
Welcome. Open to any questions? Ms. Irizarry? Gianna?
I just want to say thank you, for coming on and the history of work that you have already, the knowledge, the talent, the skills, and for bringing them here. And as you heard, I know we just met, but as you were social emotional is that's also where my heart is. So just thank you, and the whole child and everything that you just mentioned, and I know that you've been working on already. So just thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. And then when Kevin and you were speaking, that he's more the science person, you're more the emotion-centered person, but the science supports that social emotional learning is where we need to focus our efforts in, because without that sense of safety and that sense of belonging, your amygdala is hijacked. You are in fight or flight mode and you essentially can't learn. You may sit there compliantly. So I just thought I would blend both worlds here.
Team science and social emotion.
Wonderful. Other thoughts? Welcome again. We're excited to have you on board and look forward to working alongside you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right. We are
And
next.
as a principal, Nilda has a busy end of year going on,
Yeah.
so
Yes.
I had told her that she's welcome to hang out, but you're also, I know you got a lot going on, so you're welcome to leave when it's convenient for you, so.
Thank
all right.
Thank you. All right, next up comes one of our favorite parts of our meetings. We are welcoming Center School to our meeting today to share with us a presentation.
So Principal Donna Hutton, Assistant Principal Skylar Schmidt, and this might be Skylar's first appearance in front of a committee, is that right?
I think so,
All right.
yeah, it's true.
And Vanessa Vigno is our literacy coach. So welcome, and a way to connect some of the literacy work that's going on at Center School to the vision of the graduates. So I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, so thank you for having us this evening. I want to start us off before I have Skylar and Vanessa go center stage here with our literacy, give you a little peek into our literacy at Center School. But I want to start by sharing with you Center School's literacy core values. Vanessa did a really cool activity with the staff where we felt that we needed to articulate the foundation for all we do and how we build our literacy learning community. So the staff came up with this statement, and I think it'll give you a nice background to what you're going to see with the children. So Center School's literacy core values. Center School is a place where literacy learners can engage in joyful and creative literacy experiences in a meaningful way. Access explicit, systematic, and multisensory literacy instruction, and apply the skills independently to demonstrate understanding. take ownership and demonstrate independence over meaningful tasks through choice and self-reflection to build skills, stamina, and confidence. So that's our core values, and we feel it aligns very nicely with the VOG, and I'll turn it over to Skylar.
So the VOG, as a lot of you already know about, are these competencies that we see as skills that are used within the real world every day. And they're the skills that we want students to learn and then eventually, once they graduate high school, have these skills to take into the real world. And I'll kind of go back a little bit. Elementary went and started this process, I would say, even last year with the standards-based report card. And we had a committee with elementary representation from every school, from interventionist teachers, special ed teachers. And we were able to update the standards-based report card to align with the vision of the graduate. So that was kind of the first step in kind of looking at the vision of the graduate and aligning it with what happens at the elementary level. Now, I think, when we look at the VOG, it often looks very high school level: accountability, independence, problem solving, critical thinking, collaboration, communication. But they are happening at the elementary level. It just might look a little different. Accountability might be a checklist that a student is using to unpack in the morning, or the independence of the routines that are set up in the classroom for students to know, okay, this is what I have to do when I come in. Problem solving might be, okay, I'm on a recess and this happens, and figuring those things out. Critical thinking is we have students, and you'll see some examples of this, that are thinking about how they learn and what they've learned in their time at elementary and in their journey. Collaboration is happening all the time, and communication as well. So I just think there's some of those things that are happening throughout our day, throughout our subjects, throughout specials. And you'll get to see we took a closer lens at the literacy lens for this presentation, but it really is happening across the day at the elementary level with the vision of the graduate.
I'm not sure who's driving the slideshow.
That would be me.
Okay.
Yep.
Slide 3, please.
Slide
I'm
3.
going to continue to build your background knowledge in case you're unfamiliar with the components of our literacy instruction. This is a visual that captures reading, writing, and language study across the day. And those times aren't even exclusive to reading, writing, and language study times, because our teachers are so adept at integrating them into science and social studies as well, even into things like morning meeting and those more social emotional aspects of our day, with all of their tremendous skill. I want to point out a couple things. This is a lot. That's a lot of components that teachers need to master, and it demands their expertise. I don't want anyone to just be able to come in off the street and teach Longmeadow's children. I want experts, and this demands that of our teachers. Your children are in amazing, amazing, capable hands. Ms. Irizarry mentioned the personalizing of instruction is something that our literacy block allows really nicely in sort of the middle part of the chart, where it's small group and individual instruction. The first little part of the chart shows whole group instruction, and it's kind of misleading because it looks like it's the biggest block of time, but it's actually the smallest. The biggest part is that small group and individual time with students, where the teachers are meeting students where they are, and that's why this chart is, one of the keywords in the title is responsive. It's allowing our teachers to be responsive. It is really magical to see teachers' mastery of this framework in their days with students. And you're going to see the fruits of their labors when we hear from the children at Center School in just a minute. So we have a little bit of an interactive activity to do with all of you. You don't just get to sit back and scroll through your phones. Everyone received a little tool, and it has the very familiar VOG principles. And what we're gonna do is, we're gonna play a little video, and I will model this activity for you the same way that our teachers model activities for their students. Whenever you see or hear something that reflects one of these, please flip and find the one that you think is captured in that moment, and just sort of hold it up for all to see. We want you to be actively engaged in seeing what we see every day in our school. So we can go to the next slide, and we're gonna start the video, but we're not gonna watch the whole thing all right away. I just wanna preface really quickly that all of these videos were not scripted at all. We showed up at their door and captured the real deal student learning in the moment. And I was floored by all the things that I saw, which is very familiar to me because I'm in the rooms all the time and I see it all the time. But I hope that you are as floored as I am. So I'm gonna model, and feel free to participate along with me for a little active engagement as we listen to some kindergartners talk about their literacy time. We have a little communication there. We can write about Got a little collaboration and critical thinking. Yes. Communication. Thank you. Your writing partner? Yeah. Do you have writing partners?
Collaboration.
Spell out the word. Yeah, is that something you can do all on your own? Yeah. And your writing partner can help you too. All right, so as you can see, some of us were holding up the same cards during that time, and then there was some overlap, and then there were times where we were holding up a variety of cards. And I think you'll see that trend continue as we continue to watch. Any questions about this activity before we proceed? Because we got more video. All right, next slide. And we're just gonna scroll through
I'm
the
gonna
videos
stop,
there.
I'm gonna stop the share for a second just to see if I can get us some more volume on the meeting owl. So give me a second here, if I can. If I select the TV, is that going to give us a better? Let me try that. Oops. Okay. All right. Which one would you like me to?
The top one.
Nope. I'm gonna go back, I'm sorry. My apologies. One sec. All right, here we go.
What are you just doing, Lily?
Seeing which one looks better.
What's your choice?
Keep rolling?
Yeah, keep
Next
it
one.
going. He's looking up rhyming words for a poem that he's writing.
This is a first grade classroom.
First grade. Which one would you like me to roll? Does it matter?
It doesn't matter.
Okay. All right, let's go here.
I started learning because I need a Goblin comic, and then I kept reading it over and over again because it was so good. I started writing because I like computer, but I kept reading it so much that when I finished the book, but I kept writing it so I ran out of space. I can sort of relate to that. I started reading it early. I loved it a lot, and I'm sort of using that now because I like to write so much. But through this subject, I feel like so much that it was going to allow for it. Like, I read my book and I was really interested in music, but sometimes I share the music with everybody and she shares too. Another way sometimes we collaborate in class is when we at the lab, we're reading a book and we share our thoughts with buddies next to us, and that really does anything. Another way that we use it in our class is this unit was playing the club and we talk to each other. And they got things that all talk to each other. And people are all on the internet and they say things.
Home. Trying to talk to someone near you.
Back to our kindergarten friends.
Yeah, so let's think about holding people. You wanted someone to think you. You wanted to be a part of the game, right? Yeah, you need another piece of paper. Do you want to write here or get another piece of paper? I like that you're asking for help. You have 2 reasons. That's great, Rowan. Rowan, what were your reasons again? Can you remind me? Yeah, taking someone's boss out of their building in the night and operators to be so that was your problem. What was your reason? Wait, sorry. You said it was a penny, and then what was your second thing? Now you're gonna write that down.
This is great.
We could go to the next slide from here.
Go to the next one.
I mean, it's an amazing music video. You should check it out.
No, we gotta see it.
We're also amazing choreographers.
Movement.
Jen and the hen raced to see the happy yellow bugs under the lemon tree. They grabbed their attention with their Yeehaw! Yippee-yi-yo!
That was a second grade readers theater.
I'm Grant Garrett. And I'm Victoria Rafayette. In book clubs, so the way we choose books is usually we do something called a book cafe, a book tasting. And we go around the room and check out the blurb at the back of the book. Like look at the first few pages and try to see if we want to read the book or not. Or sometimes we read like the first 2 pages. And then in book club, the people who chose that same book as you all read, there's like this bookmark where it says how many pages you read each day. And then usually every like couple of days we meet up and we discuss the book. We discuss the theme, the character traits, the setting, the problem, and usually the solution is the last thing we talk about because like we don't know the solution right away. And then at the end of when we have everything, we usually write like a paragraph. And then we kind of like show Miss it out and then she grades it. And it's usually really fun because it's what we wanted to read. We also you write down what was called the book club constitution, which said that basically you want the yellow to each other when you read. You want to not read the book and go like up to date. Rules and consequences. Rules and consequences. And the punishment usually ended up being if you're not ready by the time we're meeting, you have to instead
set in stone, the book clubs have to go century.
So let's synthesize. What did you notice about how the vision of the graduate shows up at Center?
All over. I don't think there was a single card I didn't use multiple times.
Multiple
Every
times.
single time. Multiple opportunities.
I think learning as a collaborative process, that really jumped out at me. The way the kids spoke to each other and talked to each other, they were so respectful of each other. It was great.
Yeah, and I attribute a lot of that to the discourse that our framework allows. You know, that workshop model where the mini lesson is so tight and they're talking to each other at their desks or on the rug, and then going off and doing the real work of reading and writing and collaborating with their peers and teachers.
Other thoughts, comments, or questions for our Center School team? Gianna?
I wasn't sure we were at that point.
Yeah.
But obviously, I love Center. I love all the schools, but Center Schools, you know, my babies went there. So, just thank you for the effort. Again, I'm in an elementary school, so I know, like, you know, it's just awesome to see everything that everybody mentioned, but that y'all are, you know, just modeling and inspiring every day. I am especially grateful for the report card, and superintendent can attest to this. A week or so ago, I was driving to school, and I was just randomly thinking about Long Meadow Public Schools.
As one does.
All the things that I love. So I called superintendent, and I said, Superintendent, I'm just driving to school and thinking, like, thank you for the report cards, because it's so different. Like, I remember when my kids were little, and the 1, 2, 3s, and like, you know, why didn't my kid get a 3? And like, you know, and then just really wanting to be focused on plays well with others, you know, collaborates well with others, and here we are. And I just think that's so important, and I hope parents and families, like, really appreciate that. It will be hard for them because their kids, you know, they're still little, whereas I have the benefit of my kids were little, you know, 15 years ago, and so I did. I just wanted him to know, and, you know, by trickle down through all of you to know that just, I really appreciate that, and I hope that families and parents and the students, you know, like, it just makes a big difference. And the other thing that I'll say is thank you also, because every time somebody from Long Meadow presents, especially around the vision of the like, I steal the stuff and take it back to my school, because we have portrait of a graduate that we're trying to instill. So thank you for that too.
Wonderful. Julie?
This is really great. It was really cool to see. It's always cool to see what goes on in the classrooms. I was wondering, so I think it was today or maybe yesterday, the New York Times did a special on read-in curricula on their podcast. And so it made me think it would be nice to hear a little bit from you about what you think are kind of like what curriculum are we using for reading, and what are the strengths and weaknesses that you see there?
Well, we're going through the literacy curriculum review. I am really proud of the literacy instruction that we're doing. We have a suite of resources that we use to address all of those components that were on that chart. So students in grades K and 1 are getting their phonemic awareness instruction with Heggerty, which is the best of the best, and they're getting their phonics instruction with Foundations in K through 2. And it may not be like, I mean, I would call it one of the best, but it's explicit systematic phonics instruction, which are key buzzwords, which is why we included it in our core values for literacy. And then we have vocabulary fluency and comprehension that are being captured in the reader's workshop and getting transferred to students' writing also. I think it's clear from the conversations that we had and overheard in those videos that students are independently applying and transferring their literacy skills really strongly. I am really, really proud of the expertise that our teachers have brought to the table, their willingness to do a lot of work. Skylar's, most recently was in the classroom and put in so much time mastering a really, really rigorous curriculum that we have here. It is an exciting time though, so we'll see how it all shakes out, and I can't wait to support teachers along the way.
It sounds like you're overall pretty happy with what we have right now.
It's hard to beat the data that we have. I have never worked in a district with stronger data, so I follow the numbers.
Thanks.
Jamie?
Yeah, thank you for everything. I thought it was fabulous, seeing some faces that I know is even better. But I like Gianna. I'm very biased towards Center School. It's kind of better than all the other schools. Not really. So give them, all my kids are there. So thank you for everything you do. And I mean, I obviously, with what you said about what you have to help teach the students there, the thing you have that you can't replace on what you get is some of the people there. Some of your literacy, math, whatever it is, are just top notch. So it's more about the people than about what, they don't need any of that stuff, and they can probably teach the students. All of my kids, except for maybe one of the four, have utilized literacy, and they are just top notch, to where we are just ecstatic about how good the people are, not about what they're teaching.
Yeah.
So they really are just great. So it's my 2 cents.
Thank you.
We're very Center School heavy.
Yeah, we have another proud
We are.
Center School.
But we're the high
alum
school.
family.
We'll all be the same high school.
There we go. I just love seeing, so my kids are also now in high school and through college, but also once upon a time Center School parent, and loved seeing some familiar spaces and seeing the excitement that I remember from those years. But I also just love seeing how often these things come up, because I really think that for us to take something like the Vision of the Graduate and not have it just live at the high school, but to see over the last few years how it's really moved its way through the district and become part of that common vernacular of the schools, and become really such a big focus in what we're considering when we're talking about the whole child and all of the things that are necessary for them to be growing up to be academically and socially and emotionally successful. It's just really great to see opportunities of that kind of happening in real time at the school and see the energy and excitement that the kids have brought to the video for us. This is always our favorite part, where we get to see the fun things that are happening in the schools. So
Yeah.
thank you very much for being here tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you. I've been just, high engagement, high challenge. I mean, that's exactly what you're looking for in a classroom, and I think that's what we saw in the videos today. It was, just rooted in some amazing instruction, but really fun and engaging for kids. So that's always the perfect sweet spot
Yeah.
in a classroom. So thank you. It was awesome.
very much.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
We are headed into other reports, school committee chair reports. Speaking of energy, not really much to report, just a note of thanks for everybody for all the things. There are so many great things happening right now. Our students, our high school students, our seniors are currently at prom. 2 days from now, they'll be graduating, which is really exciting. We went to the art show at the high school yesterday, which was a great opportunity to see some really fantastic artwork from all of our students. We have field days happening and 5th grade graduations and middle school graduations, and it always becomes so real at this point in the year for me as a fellow educator to think that it is the part of the year where everyone, from teachers to parents, is just like in countdown mode. The summer is here, everybody's tired, it's been a big year, and yet everybody rallies together in such a great way to make that end of year so meaningful and to have so many awesome milestones and to put in so much time and energy and effort into wrapping up the year strong. So thank you to all of our educators and administrators and staff for all of the extra work you've been doing the last few weeks to make all of these end of year things happen, and to all of the families for attending so many of these things. So thank you very much for that. We're headed into superintendent's report.
Sure, I'll be brief. You have letters in your packet that we received from Takakawa. Takakawa East has been a long partner of Long Meadow Public Schools, and we've enjoyed a relationship with the town for over 15 years, where we've received delegations from Takakawa, and we've sent student and staff delegations there. The mayor of Takakawa and another official wrote us a letter and wrote to the town manager requesting, asking if we would consider taking the next step with this relationship in terms of making Long Meadow a sister city of Takakawa. So the select board heard that proposal last night. I expect that they'll take it up for a vote at a future meeting, but that's potentially an exciting next step for us. We do expect to receive a delegation from Takakawa in October, I think it is, and then we do expect to send a delegation in the spring of '24. So we're excited to reactivate that arrangement, which has been on hold for a little while because of the pandemic. Also note, we have kicked off the design process associated with the elementary playscapes, and a team of us met with the design consultant recently, and that same design consultant will be making his way to the elementary schools to meet with school staff and to meet with representatives from school councils and PTOs and SEAL, and so we have a process in place to gather some input from stakeholders, staff, and community members. So we expect that the construction will be in the spring or summer of '24. We had held out hope for a little while that the construction might happen in the fall of '23, but with procurement requirements and with lead times for equipment, it really is more reasonable to think that we'll kick this off in the spring of '24 or the summer of '24, which would mean that the playscapes would be in place for students beginning in the '24-25 school year. MSBA, we're finalizing some deliverables to the MSBA related to the feasibility study agreement. We expect that the MSBA board will formally invite Long Meadow to enter into that feasibility study agreement, which will mean that we'll be in a position to secure a design team and an owner's project manager over the summer. So that will really, assuming that that happens that way, will really be in full swing once we secure a design team and an owner's project manager. That, again, that feasibility study will take many months, probably as much as a year and a half to go through that process. So very, very exciting next step for us with the MSBA, June 21st MSBA board meeting. And that is all I have for you this evening. Yeah.
All right. We have assistant superintendent reports. Anything over there? All right. We do not yet have a student representative for the rest of this year, taken as I'm assuming at prom, and we have a replacement for beginning next year. Have not yet heard.
Yeah, I heard the name of the student, but we haven't made contact with that student or vice versa.
All
So,
right,
yeah.
sounds good. Other reports, LPVC, Mary is not here. They're currently doing interviews for the Board of Directors positions over there. Energy and sustainability,
No report.
no report. All right, and SEAL, Gianna.
Yeah, so Special Education Alliance of Long Meadow, I know that the school year is ending, but the website is still active, and Megan and Diane are still active as leaders and resources, so check out sealma.org if you want to get some more information. Again, the school year is ending, but if you're looking forward into the next school year, about making some connections and resources. Thank you.
Thank you. Subcommittee reports, Finance Subcommittee met this evening.
Yes, we've met twice since our last school committee meeting. In your packet tonight are a couple of FY23 budget reports. The FY23 year-to-date budget report, it's reflective of our contractual obligations through June 30th. And again, I just tried to build in my assumptions of costs we'll incur from now until June 30th. I would say, again, it's pretty conservative in reflecting that we'll spend out all of our discretionary funds and all of our grants. So it is reflecting at this time a small shortfall. But again, I think based on my assumptions that we'll be close, but I'm not expecting that we'll finish the year in the negative. So we obviously will be watching it as the course of the next 3 weeks unfold and our final warrants and payrolls get processed. But I don't anticipate that we will have funds at the end of the year to turn back, nor will we have any opportunity for any investment in supporting any needs that the schools may have with end-of-year funds. And the second report is a FY23 revolving account report. So these would be funds that we receive revenue and expenses throughout the year. Again, trying to project out where we will end with a fund balance. I would say that activity in these accounts is normal and expected at this time of the year, and no significant changes in end-of-year balances from the previous year. But I'm happy to answer any questions members may have in regards to either of those reports.
Questions related to either of those items? All right, seeing none, we'll continue on.
The next item would be consideration of the school committee to approve authority to the superintendent to approve and process end-of-year budget transfers. It would be in accordance with the school committee policy DBJA. Finance subcommittee reviewed this at a previous meeting, and this is normal practice that school committee engages in terms of the authority, so that we can meet timelines to close out the fiscal year throughout the summer, with school committee meetings not as frequent as they are during the school year.
All right, any questions, discussions, and/or possible motions related to end-of-year budget transfers?
I move that, as specified in the school committee policy DBJA, that the school committee grant authority to the superintendent to approve the necessary budget transfers between munis budgetary lines in order to close the FY 2023 accounts.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll move to a vote. Zach?
Yes.
Gianna?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Almost did the Jamies. Julie?
Yes.
And Jamie?
Yes.
And yes for me as well. Thank you. All right. Athletic program.
And the finance sub had a couple of discussions and ongoing discussions regarding athletic fees. Our meeting that preceded tonight's school committee meeting, we were able to come, there is a recommendation that finance sub has, but I believe the superintendent has a couple slides to kind of frame the dialogue of what's occurred over the last couple months at Finance Hub regarding athletic user fees.
They limit me to 4 slides now. Probably a good idea. So, as Tom said, some really interesting, informed discussions relating to athletic user fees. And we thought it would be helpful to the discussion to sort of provide some context for the discussion, to make sure that we're thinking about this through a wide lens, or we're viewing it through a wide lens. And so when we think about the big fiscal picture here relating to athletics, I think it's important to recognize the rising costs that we are seeing in the world of athletics. And there's a few drivers that are worthy of our attention. This isn't a complete list, but transportation, I think it's well known to everybody that fuel costs have increased, the costs of securing buses has increased, and we've also seen several of our teams are experiencing increased transportation costs associated with both in-season and post-season travel, and for reasons that relate to the tournament structure, the state tournament structure. We've had to take on those added transportation costs. Costs of officials, the salaries associated with running the program, the salaries associated with site management, site supervision are also something that we've been tracking. At the same time, we have a set of user fees that has not increased in over 10 years. Tom may have the exact year. In fact, there was a slight decrease in some of the user fees in 2018. So we are reliant on user fees as a source of revenue to run the program. Gate receipts in Long Meadow schools and most high schools nowadays have flattened out and decreased in many cases. And this is really despite the fact that this school committee, and really it ought to be a bullet up here on the screen for you, despite the fact that this school committee has made a greater effort in terms of the general fund allocation towards athletics. So despite that, and we're seeing some gaps that we need to be attentive to. The response to this, I think, is sort of three-pronged. One is to, with the encouragement and expectation of the Finance Subcommittee, to look at the fee structure as a critical source of revenue, but to make sure that that fee structure is sort of attentive to the costs of running individual sports, the participation levels, and the revenue associated with each of those sports in the form of user fees and gate receipts. And so that's really what's on our agenda tonight, is to take a look at the fee structure. But it's also important we ought to start to think about the FY25 budget, though we just settled the FY24 budget. Not too early to start thinking about the 25 budget and the possibility of a larger general fund allocation to athletics in that budget, just to ensure that we are budgeting in a way that reflects the true costs of running the program. And I think that we'll need to continue to keep our eyes on how we can contain costs and find some efficiencies in the athletic program. Tom has been working with the high school administration on online ticketing. We think that is a potential to help us be more efficient in our management of contests. Transportation, I think we need to continue to explore how we can contain rising transportation costs. That's a separate discussion that would take a considerable amount of time, but we just want you to know that that's on our minds. And then site supervision as well. So that's really sort of the wider fiscal context and the context that this discussion of user fees ought to be considered within. Finance Subcommittee had asked us to bring them some options relative to the athletic fees, and we had come up with 3 different options. The first option would have been a flat increase of $40 per sport, with the exception of football and ice hockey for both men and women, which are sort of outliers in terms of the costs associated with running those programs. This option would generate an additional $50,000 towards FY24. The second option, which got the most attention, was a fee increase that was, I say, guided by the difference in each sport between the revenues and the expenses associated with each sport. So that gap became sort of a jumping off point. It wasn't sort of blindly applied, but it was a way for us to start to think about right-sizing the fees relative to the costs of running each of the programs relative to the participation levels. The increases associated with option 2 ranged anywhere from $0 to $90, and I'm wondering if that also, does that apply to hockey? Hockey might have been above that range. Is that, yeah? So and that is on the spreadsheet that is in front of the committee. This would generate an additional $47,240 projected, it's for FY '24. It's really important to remember that, these discussions, we have to recognize that each year, participation levels change, the costs associated with running programs change. So, we're making recommendations based on historical patterns or based on the best information in front of us relative to participation levels and the costs of running the program. Option 3, I can say that Finance Subcommittee ruled that out. It builds on option 2 with some increases for subsequent years, but for the purposes of tonight's discussion, the Finance Subcommittee arrived at a recommendation to pursue option 2. So then I'll stop there and turn it over to the Finance Subcommittee to provide some additional context or explanation.
Yep.
You're from Finance Sub.
Yep.
Jamie, go for it.
Yep, and I think Marty did a fantastic job kind of guiding us through, hey, here's where we started the budgeting process, and then how it trickles down into some of these smaller buckets. And really the intent of the committee to review is just the user fees, and have we kept up with the rising costs that are, they're here, So, and whenever we looked at them, we thought that option 2 provided us the best opportunity to do it in a way that was reasonable, fair, and, fairly equitable across multiple sports, excluding football and hockey, which they're kind of separate in the way we looked at those. But we had a good discussion around it, and really kind of came back that we thought that option was the best, and didn't want to really discuss years 2 or 3 in this area. Because I think all think that there's a lot more information, work, thoughtfulness that needs to go around it. We've already had many meetings discussing this, and we think, before we get ahead of ourselves for 2025, we should just work on the here and now. Know that, at least we have decent or good information as it relates to this year, and then address next year's when we get, deeper into 2024 school year. And I don't know if Kev or Julie have anything to add, but that's...
Yeah, I mean, I think it was really helpful, the discussions over the last couple of meetings. And we did spend time on both of the options, and I think we really liked option 2 because it focused on where the largest percentage gap between the revenues and what the expenses were. And the other thing that we really liked about this is if you look at, so we essentially said, look, fees have to increase. And if you look at option 2, the number of kids or number of families who will see a larger increase in option 2 than option 1 is only 24%. 76% of the participants will see a smaller fee in option 2 than option 1. And we think that's a better reflection on what is actually going on in the budget. And so we felt happier about an overwhelming majority of folks are going to see a smaller percentage increase in their rise in that fee in option 2 than option 1. So that was one of the things that we were most happy about. And that smaller percentage fee, so if we think about that 76%, that means those folks are going to see either no increase, so it's going to be the same fee for skiing, but all those other sports that are the 76% of kids who see the smaller increase, it's going to be somewhere between $0 and $25 as their increase, right? So that's 3/4 of the families. The increase fee is somewhere between $0 and $25.
I think I would just say, I think I agree with all of that. I think the conversations we had were really helpful for diving a little bit more deeply into, what are we actually paying for with athletics? And I know Marty mentioned this, but I think it's important to, part of the goal here was to get to fees that may match modern times. But another part of it was to make sure that we're acknowledging these costs up front. And I think that's really important to the larger conversations we have on school committee about the priorities that we have and the things that we want to fund, it's really important to be able to acknowledge those costs up front for both, I think, for us and for the town. And then just one of the other things that we didn't discuss here, we were keeping equity in mind as we were doing this as well. It's really important to us to make sure that we're complying with Title IX and that we have, we're thinking about equal opportunities for both female and male students. So that was a really important factor as well. And then just to Marty's point, like there'll be an ongoing conversation, and I think Jamie said this too, about fees in the future. So it's, I think doing something that's kind of like a 1 year allows us to collect a little bit more data. Tom was helpful in pointing out that, like, because of COVID, it's really hard for us to go back and look over time to see what participation and what costs have looked like. So this can be kind of a starting point for the next few years.
So can I ask, on the question of Title IX, when we're talking about the increases, do the increases look the same? Say you're looking at one of the sports, soccer is the first one that caught my eye. Would that be the same increase for both the boy and the girl? Okay, so they will continue to be the same cost for the girl program as
They're all
as the
they're
boys
all
program.
identical on there. If you
Gotcha. I know they have been
Yeah.
historically, but the
Yeah.
percentage increases would keep them the same. Okay, thank you. Gianna?
Thank you, Nicole. So Kevin, when you're, because I'm looking at, so we're talking about option 2, correct?
Yep.
When I'm looking at increase range from 0 to 90, does that mean like sport X could go up $25, but sport Y could go up $90?
Yeah, so Marty, is it possible for you to show the option 2, just so it's clear? Or
Yeah.
is that not? So, yeah, because that way you can just see, Gianna, that.
Actually, I'm not sure if I have that file electronically.
It's in the,
It's in the
school committee.
packet.
All right,
Okay, is that what I, no, that's smaller.
I can pull that up.
I think you have to go into.
I mean, I can just walk
Agenda
you
9 folder,
through
Marty.
it.
Oh,
Well,
one-
then we can
yeah,
share it for
yeah.
the community too.
Here.
Meeting only.
Yeah. I can find that for us.
The other thing that an outlier is hockey, as we mentioned. So the proposed increase in hockey is gonna be $250, right? So that's big, as Marty said, that's bigger than the $90. So that should say, will range from $0 to $250, right? Because hockey is very expensive.
That's per, $250
That's
Per
in
season?
addition to what the fee is. So
Which is
the hockey fee
$600.
will be $850 per person. And Jamie told our committee that that is a bargain
That's normal,
for ice
Jamie?
hockey.
That's you gotta, what we're talking about here is not covering our costs. It's really keeping up with the budgeting process. We're really creating a level budget. We're kind of funding from the general fund the same amount we've been funding, right? So what we're collecting from families is nowhere near covering the cost of some of these sports. Some of them they may, but some of these other sports, we're not covering the cost. We're just managing the user fees for what is appropriate and what should be going up. So $850 for hockey is very inexpensive when it comes to the sport of hockey.
Okay, and thank you for that, I get that.
Yeah.
I think my brain is always going to,
Accessibility.
if you tell family X, who has 2 soccer players, that now they've got to spend, these are just made-up numbers, people, so, but,
We don't have to make it up. It's $260.
Yep.
so,
We're saying next year it will cost $260 for one
For
kid to play soccer.
boys or girls
Boys or
soccer,
girls.
they're, yep.
and that's a $50 increase, or that's a,
That's no
That's a
increase.
that's
some
a
kind of-
$25 increase.
okay.
You can, most of them, or as Kev was saying, the majority, that's the percentages that he was talking about. The vast majority are not seeing a significant increase. It's from $0 to $25.
And,
But there are sports where it will be a little bit bigger of a jump. Football and hockey are those sports that are a little bit more significant than the others.
And will-
And basketball and lacrosse.
Sorry, yeah. Yep,
Right.
Yep,
Yep.
yep.
and will that, is there some kind of, let's say some family who has 4 kids, playing sport, like, is there some kind of, is there a way for
So
them?
we'll turn it to Tom to ask again, can you remind people of opportunities for lowered costs, payment plans, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, we do. We have a subsidy app. We also have had a 5-sport cap. So if there are families with multiple student athletes that play multiple seasons, once they hit the 5th season, they don't have to pay any more fees for their students to participate in that year.
Oh, that's
That's
nice.
5 sports
5
per kid or per?
per family, per household.
Okay.
So again, 2 or 3 student athletes playing multiple seasons, you can hit it in a couple of seasons. So
But
So
I
that,
think-
I'm sorry, go
I
ahead.
was just gonna say, but to your point, like playing sports in Longmeadow is expensive for sure, and for families, it really does add up across multiple seasons.
Yeah.
Can I ask if, when we're talking about the increase for hockey, for example, going to $850, and the increase for football goes to what again? Sorry to find it fast.
350.
Goes to $350. Are these comparable to what fees folks pay in surrounding towns?
I'd say we have the highest fees in the area. And there are some districts that don't charge fees at all.
Yeah, it's very, we went through this probably, 4 or 5 years ago, and it's very different on how schools fund athletics from school to school. You know, Central is very different than West Side, which is very different than East Longmeadow and Longmeadow, just because they have a different commercial tax base than us.
Yeah.
So it's always been funded very different. We are definitely one of the highest, if not the higher of fees as it relates to many of the fees that we've talked about.
I think it goes back to the conversation around the FY25 budget and whether or not we'll be in a position to make a greater allocation to athletics, so as to, lessen our reliance on fees, or I should actually say, so as to really cover some of the growing gaps that we're seeing relative to our athletic program.
The one thing I will say is the fees that you're looking at there for many of the sports, I won't say all of them, but many of them, 'cause, many of those fees are equal to or less than what you pay for youth sports in the town of Longmeadow. So youth sports, we do not pay, right, officials as much. We do not pay coaches in the town of Longmeadow, and we do not travel, right, and pay for travel. So we're obviously subsidizing it from the general fund to a degree, and then a portion of it's coming from these user fees. But, those are very comparable what your 3rd grader in many of those sports, or 4th grader or 5th grader would pay for the comparable sports at the youth level. That is kind of where most of those fees are.
Okay.
So this projected plan would increase revenue by $47,240?
Based on last year's participation.
Okay.
Yeah.
And this past year, we were in the red $192,000 and change.
for FY22, correct.
Okay. So we still need to be looking at the general fund as far as, there's still a significant percentage that's coming, but this might lower that from close to 200,000 to a little bit more like 150,000, depending on participation.
That's the goal. Correct.
Further questions or comments,
Well,
Kevin?
and one of the things that we talked about was if things work out, based on estimates for next year, it's possible that if you look at the user fee column and then you look at the combined school budget and difference columns, like the user fee plus essentially the school committee input, those should be about the same. That was one of the things that we talked about, where now you can see that the user fees are much less than if you add the school budget and the difference, right? If we could get those closer to 1-to-1, that felt to the finance subcommittee like a
Makes
better
sense.
place for the committee and the town to be.
That makes sense. All right.
And I think Kevin hit this earlier, but I think there's 26 fees that are reflected on this. 17 of them would increase $25 or less. So it's a reflection of the costs of running some certain programs.
All right, other questions, thoughts, and do we have a motion for this?
We do.
Yes. All right, take it away.
And Nicole, sorry.
Oh,
just,
yes.
Tom, so I know you said, the maybe decreases or discounts, or the 5-sport thing. I'm just thinking about the 850 in particular for a family. Is there also an option of like a payment plan, okay,
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
okay.
I know the athletic director or myself would be happy to work with families in terms of setting up a payment plan.
Perfect, thank you.
Welcome.
Other questions?
I move on the recommendation of the Finance Subcommittee that the school committee approve the revisions to the athletic user fees for fiscal year '24 as presented.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
Option number 2, as presented.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Second, thank you. For FY '24, just to clarify, means that this will impact students beginning in September. Well, August, realistically, because that's when the first sports begin.
Correct.
Correct, okay. Any further comments, questions? Seeing none, we'll move to a vote. Zach?
Yes.
Gianna?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Jamie?
Yes.
And yes for me as well. Thank you. We have no other subcommittee reports today, so we'll move on to ongoing business. We have an item related to school choice. Dr. Shea?
Sure. So we have a family that had applied for school choice, and we subsequently learned that the family was in fact eligible for the sibling preference that's given to applicants who have a sibling enrolled at the time of application. So to make that right, we're recommending tonight that the school committee open one additional grade 1 school choice slot. And again, it's to address the information that we have relative to the sibling preference option that is associated with the school choice program.
All right, follow-up questions and/or possible motions?
I move that the school committee open one additional grade 1 school choice seat for a sibling of a student already in attendance in the Long Meadow Public Schools.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll move to a vote. Zach?
Yes.
Gianna?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Jamie?
Yes.
And yes for me as well. All right, we are moving on to new business. We have a consent agenda with 3 gifts for the school. Who is speaking to that?
I'll take a shot at it if I can find our, so consistent with your policy, you would need to confirm receipt of some gifts that were made to our music program. I believe there is an excerpt of a spreadsheet that we use to manage this in your packet. These are collections that were completed following some of our recent concerts. So there's a consent agenda recommended motion that you could entertain.
All right, we have questions related to this and/or possible motion.
I move that the school committee accept the consent agenda for June 6, 2023 as presented.
All right, as a note, there is no discussion about a consent agenda. If a committee member would like to discuss an item from the consent agenda, it would have to be removed from the agenda by a vote of the committee. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Do we have any items that need to be removed? All right, seeing none, we will move to a roll call vote. Zach?
Yes.
Gianna?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Jamie?
Yes.
And yes for me as well. Thank you. All right, next, we move on to another headed towards goodbye.
We have a lot of transition happening on the committee level and then for us at central office level. So I regret to convey, as the committee already knows, that we received notice from Assistant Superintendent Sue Bertrand that she intends to retire effective October
6th.
9th?
We'll go with the
Close
9th.
enough.
We'll keep you longer, the 9th. October 9th, 2023. And so this is obviously, important news. I've had the opportunity to work with Sue for 7 years, and someone that keeps me on my toes in a lot of different important ways. One, she's just a tireless advocate for inclusion, and has really stretched my thinking on that topic. She's stretched my thinking on the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. Sue has been, maybe more than anybody on the administrative team, the person that really drives our district improvement plan. So much of the provisions of that plan fall on her desk, and she's been a great shepherd of that plan and has really kept it at the forefront of our work. And when you do that, it makes decisions easier. When it's tied to, when professional development, resource allocation, curriculum decisions are tied to your district improvement plan, it's important. So I'm always appreciative of how Sue has led us in that really, really important way. But mostly, and she's got a lot of time still ahead with us, but mostly I'll miss her amazing sense of humor, her tremendous collegiality, the talks over in the break room about life and family and all kinds of other really important things. So Sue, one of our longest standing administrators in the district, and has been serving Long Meadow Public Schools for over 20 years and has been involved in public education for more than 30. And so it's a retirement that I noticed that I didn't want to receive, but it's well-deserved and well-earned, and we'll have plenty of chances to wish Sue well in the months ahead. But since the assistant superintendent is a position that is appointed by the school committee, procedurally, it would make sense for the school committee to acknowledge it and formally accept that notice of retirement. So.
Thank you.
All right, do you,
I like,
particular?
like Dr. O'Shea said, I'll be here. I'll be playing this
Playing this
venue
role.
for a few more months, so I'll save my comments if you don't mind, but I just thank you always for the support, and I will miss Kevin and Gianna. I will miss checking out his water bottle for new stickers. I feel like we have accountability and emotional stuff, and you guys have been a great balance, and you answered our call when we needed you, and thank you so much. So kudos to you, and I'll save my goodbye for when I really leave, if you don't mind.
All right, I will do the same and hang on to a little bit, other than to say that we are simultaneously very happy for you and also really sad to see you go, because we know that you have served this district for 23 really amazing years and really left it a much better place than you found it, and brought a lot to us.
Thanks.
And your leadership will be much missed, but we'll expand when it's closer to your last meeting. For now, all right.
Thank you.
Nicole, can I just say?
Yes,
or do I
absolutely.
need to wait until?
No, you're.
So just thank you. When I first came on, it was like there was a heart instead of your head, and
Put me a better look.
and not just for the kids, but I hear you and I feel you and I notice you, because you also are very, very, very a very strong advocate for the educators as well, and so that comes through loud and clear, and of course they're what makes the difference in helping the kids. So thank you for that as well.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, we have a possible motion in front of us.
I move that the school committee accept with appreciation the notice of retirement from Assistant Superintendent for Teaching and Learning, Ms. Susan Bertrand, effective October 9th, 2023.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Okay, we'll move to a roll call vote. Zach?
Yes.
Gianna?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Jamie?
Yes.
And yes, for me as well. we will see you at the next meeting. And for a little while longer. All right, we are moving on to handbooks.
We have a small number, but an important list of suggested changes to our handbooks. And just by way of review, and for anybody maybe watching at home, we have essentially two handbooks. We have a K-8 handbook and a 9-12 handbook. By law, school committees must approve changes to high school handbooks. I think it's silent on approval for K-8 handbooks, but it's been our practice to bring changes to you for your review and consideration and potential approval. So I'd say, as you look at the changes, I think they tell a story. And I think the story they tell is a set of changes that hopefully keep us on the road to moving away from exclusionary practice, that keep us on the road to approaching discipline as a teachable moment, keep us on the road to thinking about how to introduce restorative practice into our discipline approach to student discipline. And you know, our schools have done a lot of work in this area, and they've done a nice job of trying to really clearly and explicitly define school-wide behavioral expectations. The fact is that, you know, given what children need nowadays, we need to do that. And so there's a set of proposals in here that, a few of which relate to that. I'll just hit them real quick. The most significant change is to include language that relates to a law that was passed in Massachusetts in August of 2022, and that is a law called an Act Addressing Barriers to Care for Mental Health. The important thing for us here tonight is that that law requires us to ensure that we have considered and implemented alternative remedies to exclusion. It holds us accountable to being sure that we're re-engaging students and that we're considering non-exclusionary practices. So the language here on page 1 is, it was handed to us by our attorney. So I would strongly recommend that we include that in our handbooks. The other piece of this that relates to maybe a different approach to discipline these days is a back to the future moment here. Saturday school handbook language for the high school. So this is an effort, again, to help us decrease our reliance on exclusionary practices. It would be a tool in the high school disciplinary tool bag, and it would represent a way to hold students accountable for our POG competencies, hold students accountable, but to do it in a way that has us resort less to suspension in school or perhaps out of school, but perhaps in school as well. I would say the qualifier to this Saturday school handbook language is that there's still some operational considerations that we have to work through. We have to think about the staff that would supervise and run Saturday school. We have to think about a rate of pay. We have to think about frequency. We don't anticipate that this would happen on every Saturday. We anticipate that it would happen maybe once a month. And again, it's just a way to, you know, reach children who maybe aren't being responsive to ordinary redirection. So for your consideration tonight, I also recognize that Saturday often brings with it religious obligations, and we would be super attentive to our obligations to respect religious observances. So Principal Landers wrote a lengthy memo associated with this. He's at the prom tonight. He wishes he could be here. This came really directly from his school council, and so credit to that group for thinking about that. So let me stop there on those two things, and then we can hit some of the items that are maybe more mundane. So I don't know if you have any questions relating to the law the language that's responsive to the new Mass General Law, and then questions relating to Saturday school.
Questions for either of those topics? Julie?
I have some Saturday school questions. One is just, are you saying that maybe we won't do it if it's cost prohibitive, or?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
But then would it always live in the handbook?
Yeah, I mean, if I think there's, if it turns out it's cost prohibitive, then we're just gonna have to rely on the other approaches that are already codified in the handbook. So I don't see any harm in having it in the handbook, even if it's something that we don't necessarily resort to.
Okay. I was just wondering if it would be better to look at it first, or
Yeah, I mean, I think we don't anticipate that this is going to be really onerous budget-wise. We think that we can make arrangements for it, you know. It's only projected to run 2.5 hours on the Saturdays that we do run it at a rate that we need to determine. And so, you know, if you were only doing it 6-7 times a year, we don't expect that it would be any game changer budget-wise. I don't know if that.
Yeah, I mean, I think when we looked at it, my recollection was somewhere in the $4,000 to $5,000 range. I think that was like once a month
okay.
for 8 months, not in September, not in June, but in those middle months.
Okay.
And having it at one location, so it would all be high school. If there were middle school opportunities, that would just be one building hosting the program.
Okay.
Other questions? Gianna?
Thanks for the superintendent. Is it, for the Saturday school, like, does it have to go in the handbook this year? Like, I feel like it needs to be piloted and then like, because this to me is so vague, like, I would hate to see it be like a detention on a Saturday. Like, and I see that it says work to be focused and productive. If it's really gonna be what we want it to be,
Yeah.
I think it needs to be more of like a, you know, there'll be, and I know it says reflect in writing on their behavior that resulted in, like, to me, this seems more like a detention style. They're gonna either do their homework or they're gonna write an essay, I am sorry for, you know, whatever the behavior might be. Whereas I really feel like, especially given the alternative remedies section that's
Right.
gonna be new, I feel like this either needs to be fleshed out more before I would say, like, yeah, have a Saturday school. But I really mean in terms of, like, you know, even maybe some training for the teachers that are going to be, you know, in
Yeah.
like verbal reflection, like, you know, like not just sitting, not like just monitoring the students
Right.
in a detention hall.
I think that was my first thought as well when Principal Landers approached me with the idea is how do we make this something even more, you know, restorative? I think the reality is that would be something that we haven't budgeted for, because we would need to, you know, have let's say a trained counselor, or there'd have to be almost a prescribed restorative practice that we would want to use. So, yeah, I don't want to sugarcoat what this is. It really is, it's a way for us to avoid having to resort to suspension. It's a way for us to avoid assigning students to in-house suspension or out-of-school suspension. So, yeah, you know, in a perfect world, do I wish I could say to you that we had, let's say, an academic teacher working with a counselor at Saturday school to do the work that we're talking about? Yeah, I do. But I think it really is just a way for us to make sure we're being observant of the new suspension law. So, yeah, I think I understand what you're saying, that it would be great if we could, you know, and maybe this is foundational, and maybe that's something that we can aspire to. I think we have had a lot of conversations as an administrative team about, you know, creating these, taking what used to be in-house suspension, in-school suspension, and making it more of a student support center.
Right, right.
There's some great models out there that we're looking at, and we would be you know, a lot of us are sort of chomping at the bit and eager to kind of put that type of center in our schools, almost like, you know, you have a nurse's office for kids to pop into if they need a Band-Aid. You have a student support center that a kid could pop into if they just need to reset, or kind of, you know, just a quick check-in with a counselor. So we would love to do that during the school day in our schools. I think that's something that, again, looking ahead to the FY25 budget, that might be something that you hear more about. But this is just kind of basically a way for us to avoid suspension as a way to address student behavior. And we need these tools. We need to, you know, there are times when, with 900 teenagers in a building, that we have to take some pretty serious action in response to some behaviors that are disruptive. So.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think, thank you for that. I mean, I think depending on the behavior, especially if a kid has to go to Saturday school, you know, they're just going to be more resentful that, like, you know, now you're all making them go to school on a Saturday. So, but this opens the door for the possibility of what you just described. So.
I think so. I mean,
Okay.
I'd say, again, in a, you know, if budgets were not as finite and challenging as they sometimes are, I think to create a student support center that you run on a Saturday would be fantastic.
Okay.
Yeah.
Julie?
Well, I actually had a question. Could you tell us a little bit about the use of, like, when we consider it appropriate to use the other kinds of, because I guess I'm trying to put this all together, particularly with the changes to the law and to the policy of, like, it's not really an alternative to removing a kid from school for the kinds of situations that are kind of like considered here, like infliction of bodily harm. So
Right.
how does it add to
Right.
the?
Yeah, this wouldn't be for, we call them sort of the big three, something that's a felony, drugs or a weapon, or assault.
Right.
That's a separate category of disciplinary thing. So those are dealt with under Mass General Law and typically would result in a suspension. This would be for, you know, I hate to speak for the high school on this, but I'm thinking, you know, insubordination, repeatedly ignoring redirection, or situations where you've gone through a series of progressive discipline with a student and you're just not reaching them, and you just need to have them understand the connection between what they're doing and the disruption to the school. So, yeah, this is not meant to be for, you know, highly disruptive conduct that would result in an external suspension. But there are times when you suspend a student because they're just not getting it. You know, they continue to park in the, I don't mean to be so trivial about this, but they continue to park in the faculty lot.
Yeah.
They refuse to pay a parking fee, or they just, the regular restorative practices that we're using, they're just not getting it done.
Right.
So it's.
But we use regular detention too.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
is this an escalation from
I'd say so,
regular?
yeah.
Do we want the policy to say that? I'm just
It
wondering.
certainly could, yeah.
The thing that's making me wonder is
Yeah.
that Tom's letter, and
Yeah.
sorry he's not here to talk about it, but says that it's meant to decrease the number of external suspension days. So I think what we're trying to do is take external suspensions that aren't for really imminent threats, right, off
Right.
the table. But I think it would be helpful if we sort of.
Right. But there are times when students do get externally suspended for things other than the
Right.
big three that I mentioned.
Right.
And we want to avoid that. We want to avoid having to
Right.
resort to suspension, even internal suspension in those situations, because internal
Yeah.
suspension is a removal too, so.
Because I think the goal of decreasing the external suspensions is a good one.
Yeah.
But you could easily see it kind of going the opposite way, where it actually decreases the use of what you consider slightly less burdensome than Saturday. You know what I mean? You have less detention
Yeah.
and more Saturday or whatever. So I feel like just
You'd be
making that
worried
clear.
that we would go too quickly to this. We would resort too quickly to this.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that's something we'd have to monitor. I don't think that's the intention here. I think we're dealing with small numbers of kids, only 6 or 7 times per year, perhaps. We wouldn't want to burden the Saturday school monitor. I think this would be used sparingly, I'm sure,
Yeah.
because we just wouldn't have the capacity. I don't see this being we're going to no longer employ detention or other restorative practices.
Yeah.
The truth is, we have a legal obligation to make sure that we're considering alternative remedies. We have a legal obligation to make sure that we are re-engaging kids in the learning process. So we wouldn't be really permitted to, quickly escalate to the Saturday school thing, but we have time on this. I mean, if this is something that you have, you want to explore further with Tom, I'm sure he'd be willing to come back.
I would
How
say-
many external suspensions do we have on average?
It's gone way down. I would be hesitant to give you a number. I think it's rare.
Are we talking 20? Are we talking 10? Are we
Per
talking
year?
50?
Per
I don't
year?
know. Yeah.
External, again, I'd be hesitant to give you a number, but
Is there a lot of internal? I don't know. That's why I don't.
internal might be just periodic and episodic. It might be for, a particular block of the day. Let's say, a child is skipping their ice block. Your ice block is going to be, in the internal suspension space. We actually, there are times when we don't really have a dedicated internal suspension room anymore. Sometimes it's just sitting in the main office, frankly. So I'd have to come back with you on the
Yeah, I
numbers
just
of
was
external
wondering.
suspensions.
I was just wondering how many, we're talking like 10 instances a year, but we're creating a whole new program and spending $5,000 or $500 a head on trying to address behaviors of 10. Like, how much are we, because you gotta look at it, I mean, if we're really gonna spend that amount of money,
Yeah.
is it the same kids doing it? Like, are we
Right.
talking like 5 kids who we're doing that for?
Yeah.
I just don't, I wonder how big of a problem it really is.
So I do think it's important to think about what Julie mentioned about adding in language that says that it's an escalation.
Can I
And-
pause you for a second?
Yep,
We just zoomed out.
Oh,
The
hold on.
meeting just went idle. I don't know if we're able to.
Brian, can
reopen.
you hear us?
I know. I don't know.
Something
You're
about
losing
the
your
Zoom
touch.
today.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with it. Brian, are you able, can you hear us?
The owl is dead.
Uh-oh. Was it not?
Yeah, it said it timed out the
It
meeting.
could be ours, something.
So if we're still
Something
moving
about
and
the-
talking as
I
much.
did it earlier too. It's interesting.
Brian, if you can hear us, let us know.
It's
Might
asking
not
me
be
to
able
start
to.
it again, Mark.
Yeah, it's really,
Yeah, I guess
yeah.
so.
Brian or Doug? Is it allowing you to start it?
It's trying, yeah, it is.
Yeah, LCTV is fine.
Okay, so it's us. They can hear us fine. We're just getting back onto our Zoom link. If anybody's watching from home, we'll be back with you in a moment.
Oh, there we go.
Let me give you the, make you the host.
And the owl's back.
There we go.
One more minute. All right, are we good? I think we're good.
And
Yep.
Hootie is, he's muted.
Oh, there we
Oh,
go.
thank you.
Hootie.
There we go. Now we're back.
All right.
All right. So I think one of the things that Julie said about the idea of, sorry, I lost my train of thought, adding in language that notes that this is an escalation would be helpful to make sure that it's clear. And I know that another, to the point that Jamie's making about the number of students who may or may not be involved, I would also encourage some creative thought around what else this time could be used for. This might be an opportunity also to handle attendance remediation for students who maybe need to make up some time with class makeups. 2.5 hours could net a good chunk of that time. So if there are folks with attendance, that could be another opportunity just to increase the usage as well.
And just to reiterate, we have, I'd say, we have time on this matter. I don't know, Diane, if you can tell me otherwise, but I think this is something, the handbooks are issued mostly electronically.
Yes.
So the entire question of the handbook, we don't have to do it
You
in
could-
sections. We could
You could,
hold on the whole thing until we get a chance to hear more from Mr. Landers. And
or you could
discuss more
approve
detail.
everything else, but just hold on the Saturday school language if you wanted
Okay.
Tom to come back to your next meeting.
All right, I think we have another section of it to discuss. So do you want to talk to us about the other part, and then we can
Yep.
decide from there?
So the other, there's an amendment to our acceptable use agreement that we proposed here. It does two things. One, it incorporates smartwatches, smartwatches, and then it also advises students. The previous language had allowed students to bring in their own device. There was a time going back 7 years ago where the district experimented with a bring your own device policy. It lasted about a year or so, and so this language is a vestige of that bring your own device policy that we had, or practice, I should say. So that's an amendment to the acceptable use agreement. And then some language relating to plagiarism. It updates it to ensure that parent notification will be made for all acts of academic dishonesty. And then it also spells out, for middle school students, it spells out what the penalties would be. The penalties wouldn't be relevant or applicable to elementary school students, but essentially the definition of plagiarism would. You'll notice that we included artificial intelligence in
Making its
the
first-
descriptor. Right?
First handbook
So,
appearance.
yeah. So those are the only other items. So there's really essentially 4 changes, one of which is the Saturday school. You could approve the other 3, or consider the other 3, I should say, if you wanted.
All of these are fine to wait.
I'm sorry?
All of these are fine to wait. There are none of them that require attention tonight.
No, the handbooks now are electronic for the most part, so.
And I would say, my preference would be to wait, and that way we could discuss, since there's so much of it that is related to Saturday school and alternative remedies for disciplinary consequences, particularly the Saturday school, maybe arrange for the next meeting that Mr. Landers is free to attend. We could discuss there. Any objections on that? Yes, Kevin?
Don't object to that.
No?
I'm just curious, the only thought I had about the academic integrity is how that relates to what's in the high school handbook.
Great question. Is that
Whether or
what
not
it is?
they- yeah.
I would not want them to be different.
Yeah.
Right, it'd be weird if you had one
Yeah.
thing in middle school and then the high
Yes.
school was different, so.
Yeah.
At the very
It's a
least,
very
to
good point.
include the AI language.
Yeah.
and-
Yes.
Okay, we can take a look at that. Yeah.
Good point. Thank you.
Can I
Nice
ask two
catch.
more questions?
Yes.
One is possibly dumb, because I might not be reading this currently, but both the old and the new language on the acceptable use are as specified by local school policy. So it doesn't really change, it just changes like the presumption, right? That's like maybe used in that.
Yeah,
Okay.
the default in the old language was that they're permitted. The default
Okay.
in the new language is that they're not permitted unless there's some specific
Okay.
permission by the school.
Okay.
Yeah.
But the schools all have their own policies anyway?
Yeah, I mean, it's essentially off and away everywhere,
Okay.
and there seems to be, not to open another issue, but there seems to be some momentum across the state around going beyond off and away and actually requiring students to place their cell phones in a way that they can't even get to them during the school day. So I'm not sure where that's going, but it looks like even the Department of Education at the state level is starting to encourage that
It will
approach.
be an
So,
interesting conversation when
Yeah, yeah.
it makes its way to us,
Yeah,
for
there's-
sure.
Nicole, can I ask one more question?
Yes,
Which is
absolutely.
really, it doesn't have anything to do with the policy itself, because I think this looks fine, the academic integrity one. But I would be curious on artificial intelligence, like, what we're teaching kids about what's acceptable and what's not. Because I know some of the kids are using things that are like aided by artificial intelligence that aren't writing the thing for them. There are these, programs that help with grammar and things like that. So I'd be just curious about what they're learning about the line.
Yeah. We can, if that's a topic that's of interest, we can pull together some information from the schools and report back to you on that. Yeah.
All right. Moving forward to Director of Special Education position. On to you again.
All right, I wonder if you could get our,
Nicole?
yes, thank you. All right, so the Director of Special Education is a position, one of the few positions that is appointed directly by the school committee and upon recommendation of the superintendent. So that's codified in Mass law. And so my obligation is to bring you a recommendation for your consideration. And so, as you're aware, Nicole Paris-Grow has served as our interim Director of Special Education since January. And I'm here tonight to recommend to you that Nicole be appointed as the permanent Director of Special Education. Nicole, and here she is now, Nicole has truly earned the trust and support of the administrative team, of SPED leaders, special education leaders across the district. She is a trusted leader to our Special Education Alliance of Long Meadow. And we had, Sue had led an interview process where we had interviewed qualified sitting directors of special education, and frankly, none of them measured up to the in-house talent, to Nicole. And so, and included on that screening committee was staff, admin, and representatives from the Special Education Alliance of Long Meadow, and they were unanimous in their decision to advance Nicole as a finalist. I met with the two finalists and along with another principal, and it was clear to me that Nicole was the obvious choice. And so tonight, for your consideration, I'm recommending that you appoint Nicole Paris-Grow as our Director of Special Education, and she's here tonight if you have any questions.
All right, questions? Yep.
I just thank you, because you also have had my own kids for their whole career, and but as a special education, representative and as somebody who works with, just thank you.
It's been my pleasure.
Yeah, you're just compassionate but knowledgeable, and that's just, for me, that's a total win. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. This is a passion of mine. So I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Any further questions?
Can I,
And/or
may I
anything you
share
would like to
something?
speak?
Do you
Yes,
mind?
absolutely.
I will keep it brief, I promise.
Yeah,
Everybody-
absolutely.
It's midnight.
Do
So
you have a
again.
PowerPoint?
4 slides. With
Less than
you.
4 slides.
Okay, I'll half a slide. No slides, actually. So I just wanted to acknowledge all the folks here. Thank you very much to Gianna and Kevin. Thank you for all that you've done and all that you've brought to the school committee, to the district, and to special education. So thank you very much. I also want to thank Dr. O'Shea and Sue and Tom for their support and their guidance and their mentoring. I came from a little middle school, down the street, as an assistant principal and teacher, and came here to central office, and it was, a little bit of a learning curve and working with folks in a different capacity. So they have been tireless in their guidance and support. So I'm really appreciative of that. Thank you very much. So I have had the opportunity the last several months to work with talented and dedicated special education professionals who have committed themselves to the academic, social, and behavioral learning of all students each and every day. So I'm thankful for that. Working with folks across 6 schools instead of just, the 5 teachers that work in your building has been a very eye-opening experience, so I'm appreciative of that. I've spent the last several months visiting classrooms and programs across the district and out of district, speaking with and listening to special education teachers, staff, students, and families. As a lifelong learner myself, I've always strived to expand opportunities for all students and to foster inclusive culture, build on understanding, compassion, and respect. So I'm appreciative of that opportunity. I am looking forward to continued close collaborations with principals, faculty, staff, the special education department, and strive to support district-wide and building-based initiatives to ensure that our special education students have a specialized continuum of education, therapeutic, and support services across all schools. I am a true believer in the inclusive practices of education and doing away with labels and allowing all of our students to be able to participate in a general education experience. So that is something that I absolutely strive for and with the educators here in Long Meadow. So I appreciate that. I heard Dr. O'Shea talking a little bit about the student support centers, and that's something that has been a passion of mine. For Dr. O'Shea, I think on my, within 5 seconds of being here, I was on that. So that's something I really look forward to working with folks on. So thank you for this opportunity to continue to work with our families and educators and administrators.
Any further questions for Nicole Periscoe before we move to a motion? All right, we have a possible motion.
I move on the recommendation of the superintendent that the school committee hire Ms. Nicole Paris-Grow as the Director of Special Education for the district pending successful contract negotiation.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Oh, second.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Seeing none, we will move to a vote. Zachary?
Yes.
Jenna?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Jamie?
Yes.
And yes for me as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Look forward to
Thank you.
moving into contract negotiations and re-welcoming you on board.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, we have another motion,
I move
not a
that
final one.
I move that the school committee meet in executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, Purpose 2, to conduct a strategy session in preparation with non-union personnel, the Director of Special Education, and Purpose 7, consideration of release of executive session minutes of previous meetings to reconvene into open session.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All right, we'll move to a roll call vote. Zach?
Yes.
Gianna?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Jamie?
Yes.
And yes for me as well. We will reconvene as soon as possible. Thank you.
Brian or Doug, can you hear us? All set.
Okay.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back. We are returning to open session, and we have one motion related to new business and the Director of Special Education.
I move that the school committee approve the 3-year contract with Ms. Nicole Paris-Crowe, Director of Special Education, as presented, and authorize the chair to sign the contract for the school committee.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? We'll move to a roll call vote. Zach?
Yes.
Gianna?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Jamie?
Yes.
And yes for me as well. Thank you very much, and we look forward to working with you.
Thank you
Welcome
very
aboard
much.
again.
Congratulations.
Thank
All right.
you.
Congratulations. It's a big transitions kind of meeting. We've got folks heading out, folks coming in. I love it. All right, so we have one final motion for Kevin to make.
I move that the school committee adjourn the June 6th school committee meeting.
We have a motion. We have room for one final second.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? We will move to a roll call vote. Zach?
Yes.
Gianna?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Jamie?
Yes.
And yes for me as well. Thank you very much for joining us tonight, and we will, most of us, see you in 2 weeks.